Welcome to the Real Estate Brief. My name is Adam, and today we're cutting through all of the noise that we find inside of the news. And we're going to be looking to try to find the truth that is in that. We're going to look at the data, make some observations, and I'll pull out some action items that hopefully will help you in your real estate business. That is the point of what we're trying to do here, because I truly do believe that there is opportunity in every single news article that you see out there. We got to cut through the noise, though, to be able to find it. So if you're ready to gain your real estate edge, let's dive into our very first story. And this one is going to be focused on helping you as a real estate agent to succeed and grow a very strong business. And it's more focused on business planning in general. So this article here is by Inman. Basically what it is Inman News is highlighting a return to simplicity. And the concept here is that they're building it a simplicity with a business built on a bar napkin. In other words, the concept is basically if my business plan can fit on a napkin, I've got a simple, streamlined business that I can focus on the key aspects of my business to help it grow. So that is the idea behind this. This isn't about like get rich quick type of scheming. It is all about building a very strong business that is not overcomplicated with typical things like tech clutter and things like that, right? It's talking about getting back to the fundamental of lead generating and how important lead generation actually is. And that's the core of what we do as real estate agents, is all about lead generations. So that's what we're focused on. And that's what this article is going to be talking about. All right. So let's share my screen here. Sorry for those on TikTok. Again, I say this every time. I'm working through trying to figure out how to get this to work on TikTok for you guys as well. So I will try to elaborate on those things as I go through this article so you guys can digest this and then use it and maybe take some notes. So thank you guys for being here. All right. So this is by Inman. It's written by Zach Kennedy. It was written yesterday. And I'm just going to pause just real quick as we go through this. This kind of resonates with where I'm at as far as being a real estate agent, that we live in an industry that is constantly changing and very complicated, and new material or new technology is constantly being introduced into our arena and trying to get our attention. New marketing tactics, all of those type of things are constantly trying to vie for our attention. And it can become very distracting. And sometimes we embrace some of these things and we try to incorporate them into our business, and then we end up getting what I would call, and this is a term in the tech industry, is called bloatware. Basically, like if you bought a phone that had a bunch of apps and stuff on it that you just don't use and don't really serve you any purpose and help you in your life or whatever, that would be considered bloatware. And I would say we have a lot of bloat in our industry when it comes to marketing and technology and that kind of stuff. So this article is going to kind of cut through some of those type of things. Stephanie, good morning to you. Thank you for being here, Stephanie. Appreciate this. Thank you for taking some time to watch. Okay, so this article here, it says in an industry addicted, this is so true, addicted to complex tech stacks and guru hacks, the secret to scaling isn't more software, Zach Kennedy writes. It's a return to the physics of business. Now, I will, again, I know I'm elaborating here a little bit, but here's the reality. The way business works and the way people interact really has not changed. Technology and systems and processes come about to help us and to facilitate a more streamlined way to address those things, to be able to get us in front of people and streamline the administrative tasks, those type of things. So when we need to assess technology and marketing and leads and all this kind of stuff that we do, we need to run it through the filter of how does this help me streamline my business to be more successful and grow a company? And we got to think like CEOs. And then we got to think as relationship based CEOs. So that's the concept. And this is where this article kind of gets into this. And this is where I would completely agree with where I would say to my own agents, like this is where you lean into simplifying your systems and your processes, addressing the things that are not working, get rid of them and focus on the things that do, right? That's being a good business owner. That's being a good CEO. All right. So it goes on. If you scroll through your feed right now, you might get the impression that selling real estate has become rocket science. The message is everywhere. You need an AI bot to talk to your leads. You need a 50-step funnel to capture them. You need a CRM that requires a pilot license to operate. We have an industry-wide addiction to complexity, and it is killing our margins. I realized this years ago when I was drowning in tools, but starving for revenue. That is a good statement. That's a great quote. I was drowning in tools, but starving for revenue. So and I would just say this, a quick audit of your tech stack. If you have technology or you have systems in place that are not generating revenue for you, that's something to either learn how to use better or cut, right? That's a great way to view it, right? Is it too complex and it's actually not actually helping me generate revenue? Then maybe I should do something with this, right? If this tool's not helping, I should cut it. I sat down with with a pen and a bar napkin, determined to strip my business down to the studs. I wanted to see the load-bearing walls. So he's putting it into real estate terms. I like that. He says by the time I finished drawing, I had a simple triangle. It wasn't a hack. It was a diagnostic tool. And it became proof of concept when I helped a struggling office climb 71% in volume in just 6 months last year. And then he goes on and says, it fits on a napkin. And if your business plan doesn't, you are already in trouble, right? You're already in trouble. It's already too complex. Really business is all about relationships in the end, especially in the real estate industry. It's about how many people can I connect with, how many people can I talk to. That's the business. Like, how many times can I get in front of the same person and convert leads into using me as their agent? That's the game we're playing here. All right. So he says the physics of business, SMO, right? Forget the team leader titles and the CEO branding for just a second. Now, he's not knocking titles, but I will say adhering to certain titles can cause you to operate a little bit differently. So what he's basically making the argument for is like, let's just strip this down to the basic necessities here. Forget everything else, right? Cast away all thoughts that you might have heard from some kind of YouTube guru out there, or you're observing other team leaders or other agents out there that are really successful on how they do things. Take all that away, right? Focus just on yourself. Every other preconceived idea gone. It says your business, whether you are a solo agent or running a mega team, has 3 non-negotiable jobs. And he said, we call this the SMO Triad, right? So one, he says, is marketing, creating opportunity, right? So that's number one as real estate agents, what we do. This is great advice, guys. This is really getting down to the simplicity of this. 2 is sales, converting opportunity. And 3 is operations, managing opportunity. Those are the 3 things, right? And I would say absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, that is the 3 things that each technology, each marketing, everything that you do fall into one of those 3 categories. And the interesting thing too is this is not specific to real estate. This is general business education, right? To grow a business, what do? You market the company. What does marketing your company do? It doesn't guarantee business. It creates an opportunity for business, right? You're getting your name out there. You're doing things. So when you're marketing yourself as a real estate agent, what are you trying to do? You're trying to create opportunity. Where do you spend your time? Where do you spend your money? Well, you spend it on the things that generate the most opportunity, right? So that's that filter. Now, sales, what is that? That takes your opportunity and converts it to sales, right? So it's the process of that opportunity, getting a lead, and then now I'm selling something. I'm now taking that opportunity and converting it into revenue. Operations, what is operations? Well, that is managing the opportunity that you got from the marketing that generated the sale that brought you into the operation part of it. This is the category that I would say a lot of AI falls into, right? A lot of the streamlining and the processes and systems. This is the administrative type tasks, right? So that's the operation category. That is managing the opportunity that you've generated from the marketing and the sales. Okay, so that's the breakdown. This is actually very basic business understanding of how business works. That's all this is. But it's also streamlining it down to get you thinking through what you do on a daily basis. He says the napkin test, draw the triangle, look at your last 90 days. All right. So he's basically making the idea, like draw the triangle, put each one of these little lines on each one of the sides. And he says phone silent, your marketing is broken. Okay. If your phone's not ringing, guess what? Your marketing is not generating enough opportunity for you. Something's missing. If you have lots of showings but no contracts, your sales is broken. That's where your scripts, your dialogues, the way you approach a situation, the way you talk somebody and show them houses, and your delivery, the open houses, how you run those, all those type of things, right? How you actually sell the property, something is broken. So if you're doing a lot of showings, but you can't convert that opportunity, something is broken inside of the sales process, right? Then he says closing deals but burning out, no referrals, your operations is broken. In other words, there's something that is not following through. Either they're getting disgruntled as they go through the process of buying or selling a house. They're not feeling feeling the love, but really just feeling valued and understanding the process and Maybe we're not explaining things and following a set system. And then maybe we don't even have a good follow-up system once we do get a lead. And then this is a major area where real estate agents struggle, is after they close a deal, how much do you stay in contact with people and how long does that carry out? So those are all those operational type systems, right? That's what he's talking about there. He says the marketing, looking for the magic bullet. He says the gurus want you to believe there is one secret lead source that will save you. There isn't. 100% agree with this, right? There is not, no matter what platform, no matter what portal you pay for, no matter how many leads you pay and buy, no matter how many billboards you run, none of that matters. None of that matters if you think that one thing is going to generate your business, right? It's just not going to do that. It might be a sales funnel, it might be one of the pieces, but it's just not going to be what actually you're going to build your whole entire business from. And if you've been in real estate in any amount of time, you know this is true, right? This is not news to you. You know that we are a relationship-focused business first and foremost. And he actually talks about that right here. He says, number one is relationship. Your sphere, high trust, low scale, right? Traditional, signs, mailers, open houses, physical proof of life. Your content, your video and social, teaching at scale to build authority. 4, digital, SEO and PPC, capturing intent. And then 5, direct, cold calls and door knocks, controlling your own volume. He's trying to address each and every single one of the marketing avenues that you have as a real estate agent, right? So that's the concept here. That's each one of those 5 is one concept of marketing. Most agents that have been doing this for a long time have some system or process in each one of those 5. And if you feel like something's broken in your model, typically it's something inside of one of those 5 that's just not generating the sales that you need to be able to convert, right? To give you enough opportunity. And he says the message, the 4 pillars, he says is 1, listings. What do you sell? The inventory. 2 is community. Do you know where I live? The lifestyle. 3, expertise. Can you solve my problem? And 4 is branding. Who do I need to become to help you? He says, once you have their attention, what do you say? Stop overthinking your content calendar. You only need to answer 4 questions for the consumer, right? So these are the 4 questions they're saying to ask. What do you sell? Do you know where I live? Can you solve my problem? Who do I need to become to help you? Or who do I need to become to help you? These are what they're wanting to know. All right. So when you're thinking about marketing and like what you're generating in emails and things like that, tailor your communications around some of those questions, because that's what they're searching for answers to, right? That's the most common things. The money movement, kill the funnel. We love the word funnel because it implies gravity does the work. You pour leads in the top and money falls out the bottom. Yeah, that's just not how it works. He says that is a dangerous fantasy. Sales is not a funnel. It is a chain. You have to forge every link, right? Conversation, appointment, client, contract, closing, right? Here's where 90% of agents fail. They try to jump from conversion to closing. All right, so this is very true. We think that when we get a lead, we can go straight into, we got somebody here that we can go into and have a closing with, right? That is just not how it works. And it's not like I can just take go out and buy every type of portal lead and do every type of marketing, right? And I think that I just make that funnel as wide as I possibly can and pour in leads as much as I possibly can. And then my conversion is then going to be good, right? And I'm going to have more closings by doing so. That is just not the way this works, right? Because there's going back to the initial systems, right? We're only talking about marketing. We're just broadening the funnel to pour everything in. But what happens if those other 2 systems are broken, right? What if your sales is just broken? You don't know how to take all those leads and then convert them into closings. Like what if your follow-ups and your follow-through and stuff is broken? You could have the broadest funnel in the world with thousands of leads and pouring in, and you're just throwing your money away because you have no way to actually take all of those leads and convert. So before you start thinking of it as a funnel, he's making the argument, think of it as a chain. If I have this chain, this part of the chain is working, and then I add the other chain and it hooks on together, it's a bind there with the process where now the lead is now going to be able to be converted. And then by doing good with both of these and it gets stronger and it's bound together, I can add another link into this system, and that then I can work on to be stronger. So now these chain reactions create the results, right? So it's not about the broadest net possible. It's about making sure that what you have set up at the very beginning to capture the lead follows all the way through with consistency, that you're good at each one of those categories. And those are the categories you got to address to be able to build a strong business that ultimately leads to a referral engine, right? The thing that retains the agents or the clients and retains and generates referrals. That's how that works. It's not so much about a broad funnel, right? I think he might even get into this. He says the fix, respect the chain. The goal of the conversion is only the appointment. The goal of the appointment is only the client agreement. Stop trying to skip steps. You cannot propose marriage on the first date. It's true. It says the retention engine. Operations is not just paperwork. It is a system that keeps your promises. When you tell a client, I'll take care of it, operations is the mechanism that makes that true. It is your people, platforms, systems, and strategies working in unison. He says, if you are losing clients after the contract is signed, or if you never get referrals, it's not because you aren't charming. It's because your operations are chaotic. Chaos erodes trust faster than charisma can build it. I taught a class once, and it was all about kind of value propositions and what you offer and that kind of stuff. And if you look at, and you guys have heard the model of Chick-fil-A many, many times, and it's so relevant here because it's not that Chick-fil-A necessarily has the best food in the world. It's good, right? I mean, people love and hate it, but majority of people do like their food. But that's not really why you go. You go because you know that the system is not broken. You know that no matter how big of a line it is, right? I can pull up to Chick-fil-A right now and they have the 2 lines going, and it could be through the roof, right? But somehow I can get through that line faster than I can get through McDonald's. It's amazing, right? And it's because what they promise, they deliver. What they consistently say that they will do, their value proposition, they deliver. So what happens? People keep going back. So they tell their friends, I love Chick-fil-A, right? So that's the model, right? That's what he's making the argument for, is like, it's not so much about having as many people as you possibly can. It's about taking care of those that you have and making sure that chain is strong in every aspect. So if you find yourself weak in one way or another, that's what you would want to address. You would want to address that weak point and then go from there and get stronger and stronger in each one of those links. And then after you have a strong chain, after you have all those systems in place and everything's working together well, then you can start talking about teams and adding more people in to help the chain be stronger and broader and broaden that broad spectrum of how many people you work with and all that kind of stuff. Because now you have a system, process, and a business model that is actually working, right? That you can then add people to and maybe increase the complexity just a little bit because you have more hands to help, right? That's how this kind of scales up, right? It says simplicity scales. We are heading into a market that will punish the disorganized and the over-leveraged. You cannot afford to be confused about where your money comes from. You don't need a new tech stack. You don't need a new logo. You need to grab a napkin, draw the triangle, find the broken link, and get to work. So sorry, I meant to share my screen. Sorry about that. So that was how he ended this article. So a couple things I'm going to point out in this, and this is to get you guys thinking. This is not just going to be, I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to fix all my problems at once. But there is, as a business owner, if you are running a company, you have got to set aside some time. If it's every week, at least every month, where you go back and you look and you audit your to-do list. You look and you see what's actually working, right? You need to go back and explain to yourself where your primary lead generation strategies are and how much it's actually generating for your business, right? If it's overcomplicated and it's not generating business for you, then you probably might need to cut that and then spend more time and more resources in the things that actually work. What I would say is if you're finding that you're not generating enough leads, I would go back and look over the past 6 months, maybe even the past year, to see where majority of your leads came from. Pick 2 lead sources and pour all of your time and resources into those, right? Because that's where the money's at. Then get really good at those things of building each chain and each link to strengthen that model, right? So I think that's really good. I will say he made a statement in here. I don't know if I can find it, but it was something along the lines of he said complexity is often a mask for procrastination, right? Complexity is often a mask for procrastination. We want to find that quick fix. We want to find something that's going to generate the most money. We want to find, we want to pour more money. We see this new tech stack and we're like, oh, this is going to help fix this problem. And we want to implement this. But ultimately, what ends up happening is we end up having all this stuff that we're trying to manage, and it actually forces us to procrastinate in doing the things that are actually working, right? A simple plan, a very simple business plan, a simple streamed down, and I love the concept of a napkin, is easier to execute with consistency and intentionality than a very complex one, right? Very easier, much easier, right? So that's the core business, right? We've got what we kind of dumb this down to. We got data management, right? How do I handle all the management? I need consistent outreach to them, and I need more face-to-face networking, right? That's what we need. So what would I do? What kind of action steps would I take from this? Well, go back in, into 2026 or this month when you set any kind of goals, and whatever goals you set, I would look through those goals you set and work backward from there. Matter of fact, I actually have a series of little shorts that I made. It was like 8 or 9 short videos, and it's talking about how to set goals and using the math to kind of come up with some numbers. And I gave some suggestions in there about some things you could do to generate business and what kind of focus you need to have. If you're an experienced real estate agent, you might already have your systems, but if you're new or finding yourself struggling, that might be a good little series you'll find on the YouTube channel. It's under playlists. I think it's like goal planning for 2026 or something along those lines. And it's 1 minute videos for it take about 8 minutes to get through it. And it gives you some actionable math to kind of get down to like some non-negotiable daily tasks and numbers to help you kind of figure out a goal plan, right? A plan for the day or a plan for the year. So I would go do that. And then I would look for, 2 to 3 tasks that generate the most business and implement them and do them every single day, right? Now, I would also, if you are using a CRM, right, a contact resource management software, I would absolutely go through there, and most of them have a way to group people. They have a way to say like, my buyers, my sellers, FISBOs, expireds, all that kind of stuff. What I used to do when I was actively selling, I would inside of my CRM, or back then it was a little bit of my phone and things like that, but I would create like an A list, B list, and C list, right? I would have those as categories. And I would then have an A list on the buy side and A list on the sell side. Okay. So my A list was always those that I had worked with before that send me business. That is like my core. And I would call that my sphere of influence, right? Those are the people that I invested more time in. I made sure never to forget their house anniversaries. I knew their kids' names and all of those things, right? That was like my core. That was anytime somebody referred another client to me, they got moved into my A list, right? They went above and beyond just using me as an agent. They actually recommended me. So I really tracked all of those numbers. I want to know who was who, and that was the ones I spent more time with. That's the ones I built a relationship with, right? I've got friends that were in my A list today because they value what I did and I valued their relationship. So coffee dates and lunch and family events and those type of things, we're still friends, right? That's your A list. So I would go into your CRM, divide your lists out, A, B, and C. B is kind of like warm leads. People maybe have used you but never referred somebody to you. C is where I would just dump every possible lead, right? Every lead I got, buyer, seller, I'd have a C seller, a C buyer, and I'd dump them all in there. And that's how I organize my contacts. That way, if I'm doing newsletters or doing outreach or specific things, the way I'm reaching out to people, I knew exactly which category to kind of go with, right? And I knew where to spend my time. And that's what I wanted to protect the most was my time, because time is money, right? And then I would absolutely go through your CRM and schedule every single week at least 2 face-to-face coffee lunch meetings with your A list. Find somebody in there just to connect with. It doesn't have to be about real estate. It's all about relationship building, right? Now, my experience by doing this was it would always come back to real estate, right? They knew I was in real estate. So they would ask, how's the market? They would talk about, family needing this and what the house is doing. I mean, it always came back to real estate. People are fascinated with real estate. So that's another thing that I would absolutely do. I think that would be very advantageous to get in front of your A-list clients. And those are the areas that I would build my business plan from, right? I would begin to talk to them. I would even ask them kind of, how's my follow through? Just out of curiosity. I'm wanting to be better. I want to improve my business and get their opinion. Say, man, was my follow up and my, communications well handled and good? And did you have any issues on the closing? And what did that look like? And I want your honest opinion, and ask them, right? Ask your fellow coworkers like how you're running and what do they think about you and how you schedule homes and show buyers and that kind of stuff. Get some get some feedback. It's not a bad thing. I think we kind of want to avoid accountability, and I think that's highly detrimental to us, to be honest. I really do. Okay, so let's get into number 2 here. This article here is talking about why innovative real estate agents focus on client experience, right? So if we went from the article previously and we talked about all these core models about how to build a business, and look, guys, I understand, like in this short 1 hour show that I do, I'm throwing out a lot of information, and there is a lot of meat inside of this, and it can be very overwhelming a lot of times with some of the stuff that I'm saying, and then trying to put it into action. Here's the thing: is it's not about making drastic changes and doing all this at once. But if you're watching this, you can take, and I've mentioned this actually before, you can go back, go to the YouTube URL of this video, right? You can copy this and you can paste it into ChatGPT or Gemini and just simply say, hey, give me some action items for my real estate business out of this video. And it reads the transcripts and it'll pull out information, right? And you can even say, hey, give me a to-do list out of this to help me build my business. And you can do this with any video, right? Any video out there that has typically mostly on YouTube, because they have transcripts that, it's Google, it's searchable, and they scan all the transcripts. Everything I say is being recorded and that kind of stuff. So it'll run that. So that's a way to kind of extract information from articles and videos and stuff that you watch, and then slowly implement those into your business and not feel so overwhelmed. And then figure out where you can, plug some of these type of things in. Don't get overwhelmed, just little by little, right? Little one block at a time. All right. So let's go. I'm sorry. I know that's not even has nothing to do with this article, but I just wanted to say that. All right. This article here is by realtor.com. It says why innovative real estate agents focus on client experience. This was written yesterday. Do I have a name? I want to give a shout out if I do. Let's see. Might be just by, I think it's just by them. It's the resource center, so it's just by them. Okay, so it begins with this. Real estate clients don't judge an agent by how hard they work behind the scenes. They judge them by how calm or chaotic the buying and selling process feels, the client experience. This kind of goes back to the whole Chick-fil-A argument, right? Like, if you go into Chick-fil-A right now for lunch, it's actually kind of chaotic. There's so many people going everywhere. But at the same time, you don't actually feel like you're not going to get your food, or when you do get it, it's going to be messed up. Somehow, they are just really good at doing this, and it has to do with their focus on the client experience, and then they focus on their operations. Behind the scenes, it might just be completely chaotic, right? It might just be going crazy back there. Managers might be stressed, but they never show it out front. The consumer is never aware of any stresses going on at Chick-fil-A or any good run business. You don't see the stress inside internally. What you experience on the outside, the experience that we have as clients is completely different, right? We don't see all that. So they deliver a calm, my pleasure. They have these kind of verbiage. And as real estate agents, that's what we're being judged on with our clients. They're watching us. They are watching us because they are nervous. They are scared. They're doing something they don't hardly ever do. And they're hoping that we can take their hand and walk them through this entire process. And look, I don't care how confident. We see this all the time. We see overconfident clients, right? I've done this many times. I know how to buy houses, all those type of things. I understand that many people have bought many houses, but they have not sold and listed as many houses and been through as many problems and situations as you have. So I don't care how experienced or that comment is that they make from a consumer. The reality is, and I have been doing this for a very, very long time, the most confident client that we have are still nervous. They're still scared, and they still have a lot of questions. They might be putting up a front, but it's still there. So we have to do our jobs to bring calm to the situation and not worry about what they do, right? All right. Anyway, buyers and sellers are getting more intentional about how they work with and not always for the reasons agents assume. A recent buyer survey found that 46% prioritize communication and availability as the deciding factor. They do not want a secret agent. And I actually had a whole conversation this week, and this is worth talking about with one of our agents. It was a very fascinating conversation. Our agent did an excellent job, by the way. It was amazing. But here's what happened: is one of our agents got a call from a customer that was upset. They were not happy with the situation that they were finding themselves in. They were working with a real estate agent from another company, but the real estate agent would not call them. They were an older demographic. They did not text. They wanted a phone call, and they simply just wanted a phone call. That's all they wanted. And the agent refused to call them. I mean, absolutely refused. So the consumer ended up reaching out to one of our agents and voiced his concerns about this other agent not returning or wanting to call him. So our agent did the right thing, not wanting to steal the client at all, called that agent. That agent defended it themselves about why they didn't want to call, and they were just trying to relay information through text. Our agent then tells them, is like, look, the client does not want a text. They just want a phone call. I'm just letting you know that they just want a call. I'm not trying to take them at all. They just want you to call them. And the agent would not do it, to the point where that other agent even told our agent, I tell you what, you can just go ahead and take the client. I'll send over everything that I've got about that client, and you feel free to help them, refer them out, whatever you need to do. That's mind-baffling to me. I don't understand that model at all. As real estate agents, our whole goal is communication. And we might have a preference in the way we want to communicate. We might prefer to just text or email. But the reality is, the client doesn't necessarily always want that. They want communication. They want the availability. They want you to prioritize them, right? And when you don't do that, it sends off messages, and that's just not good. So anyway, that's a real case story, happened just 2 or 3 days ago. And I don't understand that at all. Like I feel really bad for that other agent that is just not going to make it in this industry if that's their approach. They're just not going to make it. It says that probably doesn't come as a surprise. Clients expect expertise as a baseline. What they don't want is guessing. They don't want to wonder what happens next, who's waiting on whom, or whether something important is falling through the cracks. You can't over communicate, guys. You cannot over communicate. You can't do it. The more you reach out, the more you connect, the more you have systems and processes that make touches with them, the better experience they're going to have, right? Client experience is your competitive edge. It says what they do notice, however, is how the process feels from the moment they reach out to you until long after closing, all right? The client experience shows up in simple day-to-day moments like how quickly you respond to that first inquiry. Tension grabbing, couple seconds, guys. It's not much time at all. Instant gratification is what they're looking for. You can gripe and hate it all day long. That's the culture we live in, guys. It's just the way it is. The quicker you can respond and get out to them, the better. Whether they have a clear sense of what happens next without having to ask, how easy it is to sign documents and review information on their devices, e.g. a phone or a tablet, how you handle delays, surprises, or tough news, right? When touch points feel scattered or reactive, clients may still get to the closing table. However, the story they tell afterward won't be the one you want to hear. They might describe the process as confusing, stressful, slow, or even if you worked your hardest behind the scenes. Okay, so now, we can't say this is the case in every. You could be an agent where you go over the top and you over communicate and everything was fine and you still have a contrite client. That's absolutely a reality, right? You cannot get caught in the trap where you're trying to, appease everybody in every single situation. You could be an outstanding agent with 99.9% of all your people and still have a disgruntled customer. But let's don't fall into the trap that we think that it's always them, right? There are always ways that we can be improving the way we communicate and the way we do things. And that goes back to the previous article we talked about. That goes into how many touch points we have, how we communicate with our clients, and how often we do that. All of those things are very, very relevant. So let's keep moving here. How automation can support a better client journey. It says follow up on new leads. All right. So if somebody fills out a form, downloads a guide, or asks to see a home, you can have a short, friendly sequence to go out automatically. This is where like AI and CRMs and things like that with AI working in the background is helpful. Now, I would always advise go in, tailor it to sound like you. But if you're getting a lot of leads, that's AI automation right there. That's a good use case for AI, right? Because that can boggle down and the conversion takes forever, but you can still create a good experience that way. It says setting expectations once they sign. Like, what does that look like? Do you have a welcome email that goes out that explains, okay, we're signed. Here's the process now. Here's what to look for. Matter of fact, I actually had a really good experience years ago. when I was buying I can't remember if it was a commercial building or what it was. But the lender that we were going through, every single day, at the end of the day, at 5 o'clock, I got an email from them. And in that email, it wasn't like every single time they sent me an email, told me everything that they did. But sometimes the email just simply said, hey, I don't really have anything to report right now, but just want to let you know we're still working behind the scenes. And if something does come up, I'll let you know. I mean, every single day at 5 o'clock. Now I know that most of that was automated, right? And they could interject themselves anytime they wanted to in communication. But you know what? That actually was really good because I felt like they were working. There was a concept of that going on where I felt like I could reach out to this person and get a hold of them. And I could. I could call them up and immediately talk to them on the phone. And if they didn't answer the phone, they would shoot me a text immediately and say, hey, I'm sorry, I'm tied up, but I will call you back as soon as I can. Right? They would communicate with me. I was never left wondering what was happening or what was going on, creating this uncertainty in me. They over communicated, but I was not annoyed because I was in a process of buying something expensive and that communication did not go unnoticed, right? I so appreciated that. So isn't that the experience you want your clients saying, right? So figure out ways to do this. Keeping clients updated at the moments they worry about most. Offer submitted, offer accepted, inspection scheduled, appraisal ordered, closing week, right? Those are all major core tendencies of where things switch around, right? Those are the points where clients tend to feel the most anxious because they're waiting. A quick update from your CRM or transaction tool goes a long way. And for the steps that routinely confuse people, a short explainer video you can reuse is even better. So setting up systems to communicate this way, I think is amazing, right? I think these are where automations is extremely helpful. Getting systems in place. This is the way I communicate. This is the way I do things. I think this is all extremely helpful. Reminding you to be high touch when it matters. This is an underrated one. Set reminders for the moments you don't want to miss. Checking in after a rough inspection. Confirm docs with the lender and sending a here's what happens next note right after an offer is accepted. All right, so these are all great advice, right? Just really simple things that you can go back and start implementing inside of your business. And then it says turn the post-close phase into a growth engine. This is a massively missed opportunity in a lot of real estate agents' businesses. It really is. I see it all of the time that agents will go to the close and they close the deal and they don't ever communicate again, right? That's it. They might every once in a while send an email out and touch base, but they don't have a follow-up or any kind of connection metric set up as a reminder for them to stay in communication with past clients. Major missed opportunity, guys, because the percentage is majority, 86% of clients that use the realtor will use that same realtor again. But with that other percent don't, because chances are they're not being communicated back with or had a bad experience, right? Review requests timed as well. It says check-ins and home anniversaries, like set it your CRM to remind you of those type of things. Send a video out, a text, a phone call, whatever. Helpful after you move content, like what do they need to do? Like a short series of emails with practical resources, tips for setting up utilities, exemptions, local programs, etc. And then gentle referral nudges. And I like the word gentle referral nudges. You don't want to compel someone to send you business. You want them to do it on their own free will, right? But a gentle reminder that you like referrals is welcomed, right? So it says a few months after closing, pair a sincere check-in with a simple line like, if you have friends or family thinking about buying or selling, I'd be honored to help them too, right? So giving something of value and then asking for a referral is a good move. Start small and build from there. All right, so let me summarize this up real quick, right? We do know that agents that are going to succeed in this market, okay, the agents that are really going to grow a very strong business in this market, and it's kind of always been this way, but more now because of the way AI and social media has taken away the personal aspect away from things. The transactional, emotional, relational process is where you need to lean into. What does that transactional experience feel like for them? And I mean the word feel, because that is the majority of the way people operate, right? What is their emotional state that they have in their experience with you as they go through each one of those milestones we mentioned, right? And then ultimately, after I go through the process of the transaction, I've handled emotions extremely well. What kind of long-term relationship do I retain with that person? Going back to what I was talking about, having your CRM set up correctly, if you have an A-list group for buyer and sellers and you have a relationship, that list can be extremely large, right? And that list is where you get your referrals. And that's where I would lean heavily into that, right? That's where I would go. All right. So my action items outside of this is I would, and this would, again, one of those things that takes some time, guys. Look, business is not easy. It's just not easy. You have to figure out a day of the week to work in your business, okay, and on it. You have to find time to do this. And what I'm about to suggest is going to take a little bit of time, but it'll have large dividends long term. Okay, so what I want you to do, this is going to be Coach Adam, Mentor Adam, kind of putting his hat on right now, and tell you this is the best process that you can do. Go through and map out every single process and touch point that you have had with your past clients. Okay, go back to how you generated the lead, what the process was once you got the lead, how much communication you did with that lead, and how you close and handle the transaction, and then what you're doing as a follow-up after that transaction. Okay, so this is a massive audit in your operational efficiencies of your business. Okay, when I keep using the Chick-fil-A analogy, it's very relevant. And I'll pause here because I've done this, and this is the way my brain works. I'm using Chick-fil-A a lot because it's just fascinating the way their model works. But once I was sitting in Chick-fil-A, and we made our order, and it looked like utter chaos, right? I was sitting there with my family. We got our food. They're all talking, and I'm staring at this chaos, but organized chaos. And what I'm watching is they have, if you've been there, you've been inside, you see these like little cones that they have. They're multicolored cones, right? When you make your order and you're eating inside and you're staying, they give you one of those cones and then they set them on your table. I sat there and I watched. They would pull that cone out. That person would take that cone, set it on their table. There's nothing on that cone. There's no number. There's nothing. All they did was give you a colored cone. And then I was watching, and there's like not even a system to the coloring. It's like you could have 3 reds and then a yellow and then a green, and there's not even a system to that. But yet, hardly ever did they ever have to look around and see who's who. They didn't have to walk around this tray and be like, whose food is this? They knew where to take the food. And I sat there like, man, how are they doing this? Like, how do they know in this chaos that this tray of food goes to that person, right? So one day it wasn't too busy in the restaurant. I finally asked him. I said, how does these cones work? How do you know where to take these trays? And he said, the way we're trained. He said, we are trained to make associations to who made the order and what they ordered. The cone color and anything has nothing to do with it except one thing is on our ticket, it will say red, green, or yellow. There's no system to it, but it does make a note. So you might have 5 or 6 red cones in the restaurant at any given moment. So that now they know that at least it's reduced down to 5, right? But then they're trained to know the person. They pay attention to the family, how many kids, and they pay attention to what they ordered. So if you got a meal or whatever it is, they pay attention to that and then they deliver it. It's not yelling out numbers. It's a personal service coming to your table and delivering the food and almost every single time getting it right. So when you start thinking about this, those are systems, those are processes that make the experience so good for somebody, even when things are chaotic. They have mastered that. There's a lesson inside of that for even us, right? To be able to operate our business. And that's where us going through and auditing the way we do things is so important because we want them to have that experience. I would love for my clients that work with me to go back and say, how did Adam stay on point so well in that transaction? How did he juggle all of those things at the same time, still show other houses, still list other houses, and over communicate with me where I never felt wondering? Like what a response that would be. And don't you think that response would generate referrals? Don't you think that client would then refer people to you? 100% they would, right? So taking time to go through your business and scrutinizing and auditing the way you do things is one of the best practices that you can do. Then once you kind of get that system down in place and you figure out what that is, I would go through and just one at a time, figure out the things that you can kind of automate on the administrative side, maybe use some AI or CRMs and implement those type of things, just streamline your face-to-face time with actual people. I would then also figure out a way, if it's not in your repertoire, this is more of a retention, loyalty type strategy, is I would write a handwritten note to any past client celebrating their house anniversary, birthdays, or whatever that's in your A list. Create an A list, and then every single week, write a handwritten note. It's a missed opportunity in my book. People don't do that enough. Okay. I'm going to skip. I'm running out of time. I'm going to jump into 2 more articles here about the economy to wrap up this week in this live stream. So, guys, if you are finding value, that kind of wraps up the whole agent business model. I'm going to get into some talk about the economy, where we're kind of heading. So hang tight. It's going to be something I want you to take with you over the weekend, just kind of process and think through. We'll be back Monday morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. So, but if you have found value in this, please consider liking, subscribing, following, all of those things. I do appreciate that. So, all right. So here is one of the final articles, and I'm not going to labor on this much at all. This is Fed holds rates steady, but economists offer hope for housing. So we're going to summarize this real quick. The Fed adjusting their rate does not necessarily correlate to mortgage rate drops. Okay, that's not how this works. It can have an effect on it, but that is not usually the case. Okay, so just know when we start talking about Fed cutting rate, we're not talking about mortgage rates going down. We're not talking about. So if you ever hear Fed cutting rates, that does not necessarily mean mortgage rates are going down or up. Okay, that's not what that means. It could, but not always. All right. It says one economist said Wednesday, home buyers remain active at the start of 2026. Another expert noted that mortgage rates are nearly a full percentage point lower than they were a year ago. I like that statement right there. Okay. So when you're out in the market this weekend and you're eating out and whatever, someone asks you how the market is, you can simply say, hey, well, actually, I read an article and an economist kind of said this. He said that mortgage rates are nearly a full percentage point lower than they were a year ago. And we're really not going to see these lower rates like we saw back in 2019 and stuff, right? So now is really a good time to buy. That's a very quick, easy way to answer that question, how the market is, right? Okay. This, in a statement, the Fed explained that available indicators suggest that economic activity has been expanding at a solid pace. However, the statement also pointed to low job gains and inflation that remains somewhat elevated. As a result of the current economic landscape, the Fed ultimately decided to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate at 3.5 to 3.7%, the statement added. The move was widely expected. Now, this is where I would just simply say, no surprise, right? No surprise. What they're trying to do is bring stability into the emotion state of the consumer. Any drastic change one way or the other could cause that pendulum to swing too aggressively one side to the other. And that we don't want. We do not want any kind of volatility into the market right now. We want stabilization. Okay, that's good for all parties. It's good for real estate agents, buyers, sellers, investors, builders, everybody. The longer something is stable, nothing's crazy out of whack, the more confidence that the consumer has to move forward and the more stability we get in response, right? So that's not a surprise that Fed did this, right? None at all. It says the Fed does not set mortgage rates, but its decision to either raise or lower its benchmark interest rate influences what it costs borrowers to take out loans for home purchases. As a result, the Fed's moves are closely watched by housing experts and real estate professionals, many of whom have been hoping for years now that mortgages would become cheaper. However, the Fed's decision to stay the course on Wednesday suggests that change in the mortgage sector will only come gradually. We want that, guys. We want gradually. We do not want drastic. I'm telling you, it's not bad. If you've been in this industry for any amount of time, you know exactly what I'm talking about. All right. It says, responding to the Fed's decision, Mike Frattantoni, a senior vice president and chief economist at the Mortgage Bankers Association, excuse me, said Wednesday in a statement that the MBA's forecast has been for mortgage rates to remain in a relatively narrow trading range for the foreseeable future, likely remaining between 6 and 6.5% for a 30-year conforming loans. Okay, that's true. Maybe we'll dip below 5. I don't think so. I think we're going to have right around 6 to 6.5, like he said. So anyway, the end result here, this is what's happening. This is what we see. This is where the rates are going to be. They're going to hover right on that point. No shocker, right? And we can dissect that even more, but honestly, you kind of get the idea. So let me give you just a quick just summary, right? Let me jump down. Let's see. I got one more article after this, guys. Just one more, and then we'll wrap up. Okay, so bear with me. All right. So we do know the rates are going to be held steady. There is, to be honest, I'm very thankful that they are not doing anything one way or the other. I do like that their approach is almost like a waiting game. And when you have a position like that, I think that's wisdom. It provides, more stability into the market. This is not an extremely high rate environment we find ourselves in, right? And if you read economists and you see what they're saying, most of them are signaling that the worst is actually over. Okay. Now, when we say the worst, I mean, there's still an affordability gap. There's still things we've got to address. But by the Fed doing this and not going extreme one way or the other, and a lot of housing initiatives, which I discussed in yesterday's live stream. If you get a chance, go watch that. There's a lot of regulations and deregulation floating and being passed that's going to help the housing industry overall. And them not doing and not changing anything, I think, is the right move. I think long term, it's a good thing. What I would say is, you as the real estate agent, get out there and really be the advocate saying, quit waiting for the rate to drop, right? Like, you need to explain to them that why this stability gives us a window of predictability, right? When we have this kind of stability, we can kind of predict where the market is, and we can look at the inflation rate of right around 2% month over month and say, that's probably where we're going to hold. Job market's getting a little bit better. Income's going up marginally, but still better. The affordability gap with all the regulations is getting closer and closer in. People are pricing things better and more accordingly. Builders are starting to build more or offer incentives and buy downs. These are all factors that help move the needle into more favorability, both to the buyer and the seller. So we see a stabilization, right? So that's what we see here. So I said this once before, is like, you could create a chart that shows the cost of waiting. If someone was to buy now, and 6 months from now, with a 2% increase of inflation month over month, you can kind of get a rough number in there to kind of see and show people that's the cost of waiting, what that would cost them. Probably a good practice to do. I would get in there and just check that out and see what happens, right? I would also, and I encourage this multiple times, is go out and talk to local lenders and talk to them about, sorry, I got to fix something real quick. And talk about the programs and incentives that they actually have. And what kind of programs they offer, and figure out what lenders have what, and put them inside of your vendor list, because we want to, there's a lot of programs out there in response to things like this to help banks be competitive. It's still capitalism. They're still making deals. Just because a highly regulated thing does not mean that every bank is exactly the same. They're not. Each one offers something different, and there's a shop around that agents and buyers need to be doing. It's just a factor. They really need to be doing that. Okay. One last article here, excuse me, that we're going to wrap up with. Take a swig of water. Appreciate you guys being here with me. All right, this one here is by Kiplinger.com, by Chauncey Maddox. I think maybe I pronounced that right. Is the housing market's lock-in effect finally starting to ease, is the theme. As mortgage rates stabilize and fewer owners hold ultra-low loans, the lock-in effect may be loosening its grip. I talked about this a little bit. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. I talked about this yesterday and the day before, talking about the lock-in effect and how there is a little bit of a cooling of the market. And here, again, I'm quick. I'm just going to elaborate what the lock-in effect is. For those that might not know, lock-in effect is the argument that those back in 2018, 2019 that had like 3% interest rates on average are locked into their mortgage, because if they were to sell that house and then move and buy another house, they got to pay a high interest rate, right? They're not going to get that low interest rate again. Okay, so that's the lock-in effect. My whole argument for the lock-in effect is, and I've said this many times, is time heals all wounds, because the longer we go forward in time, the more people we have with a higher interest rate that becomes our buyers and sellers. And the people that bought back in 2019 become less of the concern, and we start focused on the past 5 years versus farther back, right? So that becomes farther and farther back in time, especially when we start factoring in the average time that someone lives in a home, around 5 to 8. As we go forward, more and more people have a higher interest rate that are not locked into that low rate. So over time, it's going to heal itself. And that's what this article is kind of getting to. And this is just validation to kind of what I was seeing and talking about. So That's what this is about. It says, for much of the past 3 years, the U.S. housing market has felt frozen in place. Millions of homeowners who locked in mortgage rates below 3% during the pandemic era boom have been reluctant to sell, knowing that any move would likely mean trading a historically low monthly payment for a far more expensive one. That dynamic, known as the lock-in effect, has been one of the biggest forces constraining housing supply. Okay, so that's been a factor the past few years. Okay, that's not wrong. That is very true. Myself included and many others will be like, look, I'm not going to sell. I've got a crazy good interest rate right now, and I'm paying more equity on my home against principal than I ever have, right? So it's really hard for me to want to sell my house. Okay, that's fair. Now, it goes on to say, but new data in early 2026 market signals suggest that the grip of that effect may be starting to loosen. Mortgage rates have eased from their 2023 peaks, right? Remember, we go back to then, it was like 7.5 in some cases, right? So even if they remain well above the ultra low levels of the pandemic years, at the same time, more homeowners now carry mortgages closer to today's rates than to yesterday's bargains. Together, those shifts are starting to change both the financial math of moving, and for some sellers, the mindset around whether it finally makes sense to list. Okay, that's absolutely true. We can just jump on down this. I think you understand the argument that we're talking about here, right? Is time's going to heal this wound. More homeowners now hold higher rate mortgages. A January 2026 analysis from Realtor.com highlighted a milestone that hints at a shift in the market's underlying dynamics. For the first time since the pandemic era boom, the share of outstanding mortgages with rates above 6% now exceeds the share with rates below 3%. And that's only going to continue to grow, right? It's just going to continue to get more and more of those type of buyer or owners, right? Makes sense. That may sound like a technical detail, but it carries real implications. It means a growing portion of homeowners are no longer sitting on once-in-a-generation rates. Instead, their existing loans are closer to what they'd face if they sold and bought again. You know, every single year, there are more graduates out of college or high school that are now going into the workforce that are looking to buy houses. Every single day, every single month, every year, right? More and more buyers are flooding into the market and buying homes. They are not buying pre-pandemic, right? So they have a higher interest rate. So this is just, I can summarize it that this article is validating what we're seeing. It's not just me saying it. It's not just other economists saying, it's even right here. So the reason why we want to talk about this is you're going to hear all these news outlets say like, oh, high interest rates and the interest rates won't come down. The Fed didn't cut rates and, you know, all this type of stuff is happening and blah, blah, blah. The reality is the interest rate is one small little factor in the grand scheme of buying a house. And the longer we go, the less of an issue it actually becomes, because historically, this is still a good interest rate. So that whole thing needs to be debunked, right? And we need to be the voices debunking it. We need to be very, very boisterous with our comments about the interest rate and how it just does not make sense to even go down the road about how the interest rate is determining what the market does. It's just simply not. Even if, let's just hypothetically, let's just say the worst happens, right? Let's say we go up interest rates to 7-8%, right? Guess what? Oh, well, you'll still have buyers. And if they buy at that rate, they can always refinance when it comes back down. So again, it's not the only deciding factor. There's way more to be talking about inside of that, right? So there are many, many reasons that people sell and buy. Marriage, kids, jobs, right? That will even outweigh those that even have a lower rate of 3% or lower, right? Sometimes you have to move and sell because of life events. So that percentage, even that is locked in, still has to change, coupled with those that do not have those rates that are entering into the market, or those that have bought in the past 5 years that maybe want to sell. Okay, so this market, as far as that lock-in effect, I'd say in a few months, we're not even going to be talking about a lock-in effect, right? You won't hear me even mention it. That's my prediction. It'd probably be just not even, it'd be a moot point. We're going to be talking about something that doesn't even matter. What would I do? What do I tell you guys to do, right? We know this is a thing. We now know that we're coming out of this. So what would I do? I would go back and look at my past closings from 5 years ago, right? That have lived in their homes at least 5 years. And I would figure out a touch point to get in front of them. Figure out life changes, life events that maybe have happened in their life, Go on Facebook, see if they've added family and kids or whatever it might be, and reach back out to them because they don't have that low rate. So that's your low hanging fruit right there. That's your opportunity to get listings. It really is. You go back and maybe even send out, some unsolicited CMAs to those clients, right? Showing them what kind of equity they've gained in their home in these past 5 years. Show them what they're sitting on. They don't have that low rate, right? Maybe life events with the equity gains, they can roll this over, buy a bigger house, and be almost in it for the exact same amount, right? So those are good conversations to be having. That's low hanging fruit. It really, really is. So that's absolutely what I would do. All right. Well, there you go. I'm past my time. I gotta get ready for a meeting. So I appreciate you guys being here. I really, really do. I hope this is helpful for you guys. Personally, that's been extremely helpful for me. It's helping me to retain and understand things better and see a bigger picture and be more on point. So hopefully it's doing the same for you. I do appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to come here and just watch and listen to me talk. I appreciate for those that have subscribed and all that kind of stuff. I greatly appreciate that. So my goal here is to help you guys build a relationship-based business. That is ultimately what I'm trying to do. So hopefully that is helping you guys. So thank you guys for being here. That is your real estate brief for today. So please, if you did find this helpful, please consider hitting the like button to tell YouTube you would like more of this type of content, not just about me, but this type of content because you're a real estate agent and you need to be hearing this kind of stuff. So it's not just about me, but it does help that algorithm. So consider subscribing, following, and all that kind of stuff to join this community of real estate agents that are focused on building a business that is relationship focused first. There's always so much more I could be talking about, but I'm going to do that next week. So please join me next week, Monday, 8:30 Eastern time, right here where you're watching now. And I will see you that way. See you then and have an amazing weekend. Take care.